The mahogany doors of Belmont Estate swung open with a weight that seemed to echo through generations. I stood at the threshold, clutching a worn leather satchel, watching my family gather in the grand foyer like vultures circling prey. "Iris, you're late," my stepbrother Damien called out, his voice carrying across the marble floor. He adjusted his platinum cufflinks with practiced arrogance. "Though I suppose punctuality was never your strong suit." My stepsister Celeste laughed from beside the crystal chandelier, her designer heels clicking against the stone. "Some things never change, still showing up in those thrift store clothes I see." I looked down at my simple black dress and comfortable flats. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. "Sorry, I got held up at work." "Work?" Damien's wife, Vivian, joined the conversation, her voice dripping with condescension. "Oh right, that little art therapy thing you do with troubled kids. How charitable of you." Grandfather's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat from behind the antique desk. The entire family had gathered in the library for the reading of the will, the moment everyone had been waiting for since grandfather passed last month. "Before we begin," Harrison announced, "I should mention that Mr. Belmont left very specific instructions about how this reading should proceed." Damien leaned forward in his chair, practically salivating. As the eldest grandson and a successful investment banker, everyone assumed he'd inherit the bulk of the estate. The Belmont fortune was worth an estimated $50 million, old money from shipping and real estate that had been growing for generations. "To my grandson Damien," Harrison began, "who has always valued material success above all else, I leave my collection of vintage watches and the sum of $100,000. Damien's face flushed red. "100,000, that's it." "To my granddaughter Celeste," Harrison continued, "who has built such an impressive social media presence, I leave my art collection and $200,000. Celeste's perfectly contoured face cracked slightly. "But the estate is worth millions." My stepmother Margaret gripped the arms of her chair. "Surely there's been some mistake. The children have been groomed for this their entire lives." Harrison adjusted his glasses and looked directly at me. "To my granddaughter Iris, who has quietly dedicated her life to helping others heal, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all properties, investments, and liquid assets." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. "This is impossible." Damien shot to his feet. "She's not even blood family. She was adopted." "Damien," I said quietly, "grandfather loved me just as much as." "Loved you." Celeste's voice was shrill. "You barely visited. You missed family dinners, holiday gatherings. I was here every week, taking care of him." Margaret stood up, her face twisted with rage. "This will can be contested. Iris clearly manipulated a sick old man. She probably convinced him to change everything at the last minute." "The will was written 5 years ago," Harrison said calmly, "and updated annually. Mr. Belmont was of sound mind throughout." Damien began pacing, his expensive suit wrinkled from tension. 5 years ago, but that means, she knew. She knew this whole time and said nothing. What was I supposed to say? I asked, feeling the weight of their stares. "You let us plan our lives around this inheritance," Vivian shrieked. "We bought our penthouse assuming we'd have the estate to back it up. Damien, tell them about the investments." Damien's face went pale. We may have leveraged some assets against our expected inheritance." "How much?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. $3 million, he whispered. "We owe $3 million. The next morning, my phone started ringing before sunrise. Damien's name flashed on the screen for the 7th time. When I finally answered, his voice was desperate. "Iris, we need to talk. This inheritance, you have to share it. It's the right thing to do." "Share it?" I was sitting in my small apartment kitchen, the same place I'd lived for the past 8 years while working as an art therapist. "You mean give you enough to cover your debts?" "We're family," Celeste's voice joined the call. "Blood or not, We grew up together. Grandfather would want us all taken care of. I thought about all the family gatherings where they'd made jokes about my little art projects and my phase of working with disadvantaged children, how they'd rolled their eyes when I talked about my kids' progress or the breakthrough moments that made my work meaningful. "You're right," I said finally. "Grandfather would want everyone taken care of. That's exactly why he structured the will the way he did." "What do you mean?" Margaret's voice was suspicious. "I mean he knew exactly what he was doing. He watched all of you for years, spending money you didn't have, making assumptions about what you'd inherit, treating money like it was guaranteed." I met them at Belmont Estate the next day. Walking through the mansion felt different now, like I was seeing it through grandfather's eyes instead of feeling like an outsider looking in. "Before we discuss anything," I told them as we gathered in the library again, "there are some things you should know about the inheritance." Damien was practically vibrating with anxiety. "Just tell us you'll help cover our debts. We can work out a payment plan." "The estate is worth $47 million, I began. "But that's not the whole story." Celeste leaned forward. "What whole story?" I opened my laptop and pulled up a series of documents. "For the past 8 years, I've been running the Belmont Foundation." "What foundation?" Margaret demanded. "The one grandfather and I started when I was 23. It provides art therapy programs, educational grants, and mental health resources to underserved communities across 3 states. Damien blinked rapidly. "You've been running a foundation?" "With grandfather's guidance, yes. We started with $2 million of seed money from his personal accounts. Over 8 years, we've grown it into a $28 million operation." The room was dead silent. "$28 million in assets," I continued, "serving over 15,000 families annually. We operate 12 community centers, fund 43 art therapy programs, and provide college scholarships to 200 students each year." Celeste's mouth fell open. "You're running a $28 million foundation." "Not just running it. I built it. Every program, every partnership, every expansion. That was my work, my vision, my life for the past 8 years." Vivian shook her head in disbelief. "But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive a 10-year-old Toyota. You dress like someone who doesn't need material possessions to validate her worth." I suggested. "The foundation covers my living expenses. I take a modest salary because the money is better spent on programs that actually help people." Damien was staring at his hands. "All those times we asked what you were doing with your life." "You were building something extraordinary," Margaret whispered, her voice barely audible. I pulled up another document on my laptop. "The inheritance includes the foundation assets, which means I now oversee $55 million in total. But more importantly, it means I can expand our reach exponentially." $55 million, Celeste repeated numbly. "We just signed a partnership with the state education department," I continued. 300 schools will implement our art therapy programs starting next semester. We're also opening 5 new community centers in underserved neighborhoods." Damien looked up at me, his face a mixture of shame and dawning understanding. "Iris, how long have you been planning this?" "I wasn't planning anything. I was just doing the work. Day after day, year after year, while you all assumed I was wasting my life." Margaret stood up abruptly. "This is all very impressive, but it doesn't change the fact that we're your family. We raised you. We deserve." "You deserve what, exactly?" I cut her off. "Deserve money for accepting me into this family, for the privilege of being related to you." "We included you in everything," Celeste protested. "Every holiday, every gathering." "You tolerated me," I corrected. "There's a difference. You tolerated my presence while making it clear that my work didn't matter, my choices were misguided, and my life was somehow less valuable than yours." Damien's voice was small. "We never said that. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Every time I tried to share something I was proud of, you changed the subject. Every time I explained what my work meant to me, you called it a phase. I walked over to the wall of family photos, pointing to one from last Christmas. Remember this dinner? I had just received recognition from the governor for our suicide prevention program. We'd helped save 17 young lives that year. Do you remember what you said when I tried to tell you about it? Celeste looked away. No. You said, that's nice, but when are you going to do something that actually pays well? 17 lives, Celeste. 17 families who still have their children because of programs I developed. Vivian's voice turned vicious. So what, you're punishing us now? Getting revenge because we didn't sufficiently appreciate your charity work. This isn't revenge, I said calmly. This is consequence. For 8 years, grandfather watched all of you make assumptions about what you were owed. He watched you spend money you didn't have based on expectations you never questioned. He should have told us, Margaret insisted. He should have explained what he was planning. He tried. Every family dinner, he asked about your finances. Every gathering, he suggested you might want to be more conservative with your spending. You never listened. Damien's hands were shaking. We're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, Vivian's boutique. The boutique that's been operating at a loss for 3 years. I asked. The one you've been subsidizing with credit because you assumed you'd inherit enough to cover it. How do you know about the boutique's finances? Vivian demanded. Because grandfather knew. He made it his business to understand exactly how each of you was managing money. He was hoping you'd ask for help, ask for guidance. Instead, you just kept spending. I sat down across from them, my voice gentler now. Do you want to know what grandfather told me the last time we talked? They all nodded, desperate for any insight that might change their situation. He said he was proud of what I'd built, but he was heartbroken about the rest of the family. He said he failed as a patriarch because he'd raised children and grandchildren who saw money as an entitlement rather than a responsibility. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. He never said anything to us. He said he tried, but every conversation about money became a discussion of what you needed, what you wanted, what you expected to inherit, never what you might contribute or how you might help others. Celeste was crying now. We thought we were living up to his expectations. The cars, the clothes, the lifestyle. We thought that's what success looked like to him. Success to grandfather meant using your advantages to lift others up. It meant building something meaningful. It meant understanding that wealth is a tool, not a trophy. Damien wiped his eyes. So what happens now? Do we just lose everything? I was quiet for a long moment, weighing my words carefully. The foundation is expanding rapidly. We need experienced people to help manage growth, develop partnerships, and oversee operations. What are you saying? Margaret asked. I'm saying there are positions available. Real positions with real salaries for people who want to dedicate themselves to meaningful work. Vivian scoffed. Charity work? We're not qualified for charity work. You're qualified for business management, financial planning, marketing, and operations. The foundation needs all of those skills. Damien looked up hopefully. What kind of positions? Regional director positions start at $120,000 annually. Development directors earn $150,000. Senior management positions can reach $200,000. But, Celeste asked, sensing there was more. But it means actually working. It means caring about outcomes rather than appearances. It means measuring success by lives changed rather than dollars accumulated. Margaret shook her head. You're asking us to completely change who we are. I'm offering you the chance to become who grandfather hoped you could be. Damien stood up and began pacing again. $120,000 isn't enough to cover our debts. The foundation offers debt consolidation assistance for employees facing financial hardship, I said. 0% interest, payments based on income. It might take 10 years to pay off $3 million, but it's achievable. 10 years, Vivian whispered. 10 years of steady work, of building something meaningful, of actually earning your financial stability instead of inheriting it. Celeste was still crying. What if we can't do it? What if we're too used to this lifestyle? Then you'll fail, and you'll lose everything anyway. But at least this way, you'll have a chance to discover who you are when your worth isn't defined by your bank account. I stood up and gathered my things. I need an answer by Friday. The positions start Monday if you want them. And if we don't, Margaret asked, then you figure out your own solutions to the problems you created. The inheritance goes exactly where grandfather intended, toward helping people who need it. Damien looked around the mansion one last time. What happens to the house? It becomes the foundation's headquarters. We'll convert it into office space, meeting rooms, and a residential facility for families accessing our programs. You're turning our family home into a homeless shelter. Vivian's voice was horrified. I'm turning it into a place where families can rebuild their lives, where children can receive the support they need, where healing happens. I paused at the door. Exactly what grandfather would have wanted. I left them sitting in the library, surrounded by the weight of decisions they'd never had to make before. For the first time in their lives, they couldn't buy their way out of a problem or assume someone else would solve it for them. That evening, my phone rang. It was Dr. Patricia Williams, director of the state's Child Welfare Services. Iris, I have incredible news. The legislature approved our proposal. Statewide funding for trauma-informed art therapy in all public schools. That's amazing, Dr. Williams. How much? $12 million annually for the next 5 years. Your foundation will be the primary implementation partner. I sat in my small apartment, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the 17 lives we'd saved and the thousands more we could reach. This was what real wealth looked like, not the cars or houses or status symbols, but the ability to create lasting change in the world. Friday came, and they all showed up at my office. Not the mansion this time, but the community center where I'd been working for 8 years. They looked uncomfortable in the modest building, surrounded by children's artwork and motivational posters. We'll take the positions, Damien said quietly. All of us. Why? I asked. Margaret answered first. Because the alternative is losing everything, and at least this way we might learn something about ourselves. And because, Celeste added, her voice shaky, I realized I've never actually accomplished anything on my own. Everything I have came from grandfather's money or my social media followers. I don't even know who I am without those things. Vivian nodded reluctantly. The boutique was failing because I was trying to be something I'm not. Maybe it's time to find out what I'm actually good at. I looked at each of them, seeing vulnerability I'd never witnessed before. This won't be easy. The work is demanding, the hours are long, and the problems we deal with are heartbreaking. But it matters, Damien said. For the first time in my life, I want to do work that actually matters. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked on my door. Iris, the regional directors are here for the expansion meeting. Damien walked in first, followed by Celeste and Vivian. They looked different, less polished, more purposeful. Their clothes were professional but practical. Their expressions showed the kind of tired satisfaction that comes from meaningful work. How are the numbers looking? I asked. Celeste, now our Southeast Regional Director, smiled genuinely for the first time I could remember. We're exceeding all targets. The Atlanta Center is serving 40% more families than projected. Damien, running our financial aid programs, added, we've helped 37 families avoid foreclosure this quarter and provided emergency assistance to over 200 children. Vivian, who'd found her calling in program development, was practically glowing. The trauma recovery workshops are being requested by schools across 3 states. We can't keep up with demand. Margaret had taken a position as volunteer coordinator, working part-time, while learning to live on a modest budget for the first time in her life. The strangest thing, she told me during our monthly check-in, is how much more meaningful everything feels when you're working towards something bigger than yourself. I thought about grandfather often, wondering if he could see how his plan had unfolded, not the money itself, but the way it had forced everyone to confront who they really were beneath the surface of inherited privilege. The foundation now served over 25,000 families annually. We operated in 7 states with 43 community centers and partnerships with over 300 schools. But more importantly, my family had discovered something they'd never known they were missing: purpose. 1 year after the will reading, we gathered at the estate again, now the Belmont Foundation headquarters. The mansion hummed with activity as staff members coordinated programs and families attended workshops. "Do you ever miss it?" Celeste asked as we stood in the grand foyer, now converted into a welcoming reception area. "The old life, I mean." I thought about her question carefully. I miss grandfather, but the old life? No. This is what he always wanted for all of us. Damien joined us, carrying a stack of scholarship applications. "I've been thinking about something grandfather used to say. Money is like water. It's only valuable when it's moving." "Moving where?" Vivian asked. "From where it's abundant to where it's needed most," I replied. He understood that hoarding wealth is like damming a river. Eventually, everything downstream dies. As the sun set through the stained glass windows, I walked through the mansion one last time. Every room now served a purpose: art therapy studios, counseling offices, meeting spaces for support groups, and administrative offices for the staff who made it all possible. My phone buzzed with a text from one of my original art therapy kids, now graduating from college with a degree in social work. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. I'm going to help kids the way you helped me." That night, I drove home in my reliable Toyota, past billboards advertising luxury cars and designer clothes. None of it mattered anymore, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I'd discovered something more valuable than any possession. I'd learned what grandfather knew all along: true wealth isn't measured by what you own, but by what you can give away. Not just money, but hope, healing, and the chance for others to discover their own worth. The inheritance had been perfect, not because of the money, but because it had forced everyone to choose who they wanted to become. And in the end, we'd all inherited something far more valuable than grandfather's fortune. We'd inherited his wisdom.